Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And internally, I'm screaming, not here. Definitely not here.
People still see it as that Wolf of Wall Street, everyone shouting at each other. It's chaos. It's 100 mile an hour.
I need to do this. I need to create some other way of generating income that can actually lead to wealth.
What sort of trajectory can people see? That's crazy. Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Lewis with us. Lewis, do you just quickly want to introduce yourself and let everyone know a bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Lewis. I am currently 35 years old. Unfortunately, I will be older in August. I am a trader, so I trade financial markets. I've been doing it for over 11 years. I now run a global community that helps and teaches other people how to trade, but gives them a place to belong in a sense of community as well. And I've been doing that for 5 years now. So I was trading for 6 years before I set that up. My background is in the church as a therapist. So I've always wanted to help people. And I love what I do. Absolutely love my life. Made some very intentional choices to get to where I am today, and they paid off. So that's good.
Wow.
And yeah,
I want to dive into a bit more about your story and what made you end up at where you are today, because I think what was really interesting when I was reading into is sort of how you transitioned into where you are today.
yeah, yeah. It's not a linear path by any stretch of imagination. So I was basically on track to be someone who ran churches and led a church. So I was ordained in a church in America for a number of years, and then had to step away from that. The counseling work I did was very, very intense. So I worked with very, very complicated cases of people with real significant trauma, and I loved it. I loved seeing the transformation and the change and the positive change in their lives, and I did that all over the world. And in my early 20s, I kind of burned out and realized I don't know what I'm doing. Well, at least I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. Imposter syndrome kind of kicked in.
Yeah.
My 18, 19-year-old ego of I know everything about the world and life kind of started to drop away. And I realized I didn't necessarily have the internal emotional resources myself to deal with everything that I was dealing with, which started this whole journey of kind of refiguring out who I was, what I was about. So I stepped away from that role, stepped away from the church for various different reasons, including that, and found myself working in retail. So the only job I could get was working on the shop floor of a men's clothing brand called Burton Menswear, not the cool ski brand, the other one that was partnered with Dorothy Perkins. Yeah, it used to be on everyone's high street. And it's basically where everyone would go to buy their school trousers, pretty much. And I got rejected from McDonald's, rejected from KFC, rejected from the local mechanics. I can't imagine me being a mechanic, but I wanted to work.
Yep.
And from there, I discovered and realized I didn't want to work for somebody else the rest of my life. I looked at my boss's boss and they were super stressed out. They'd lost their hair. I was like, this isn't the life for me. I'd worked my way off of the shop floor into head office, and that was just as bad. I had an awful manager. And yeah, it just was not the life for me whatsoever. So I remember one day I was sat in the meeting room having my 12-month review or 6-month review, whatever it was. And my manager, who was an absolute cow, said, oh, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? And internally I'm screaming, not here, definitely not here. But outwardly I'm like, oh, I'd like to be in this position. Everyone knows you're lying when you say that.
It's such a
And
pointless question, isn't it?
it's
Like,
such a pointless
where do you
question.
see yourself being in 5 years? Other thing as
Because yeah,
well is I guarantee you are someone halfway through, like say they're 2 years into that after asking that question, their trajectory is completely changed because something's happened in their life or something's happened in
yeah,
their career that means they're going in a completely different direction. So it never makes sense. As you say, most people's stories I know from doing this is never, oh, we started here and then we went all the way to here. That's never how it works. It always
yeah,
kind of goes in different directions. It's so strange that we're in a world that everyone asks, like, oh, what, like, it's always the first two questions is where do you see yourself in 5 years, and also what do you do for a living currently?
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's kind of English culture. That is
yeah.
just us, and it's so strange.
It is English culture. It's also status-based culture. So the reason you kind of ask someone, this is like very David Attenborough, reason you ask someone, oh, so what do you do? Is so your brain can create a gauge of if they're above or below you. And
Yeah.
so when you know when they're above or below you, it dictates how you then engage with that person. It shouldn't, but that is just how we're kind of wired. Now, those of us who just like people, we don't necessarily do it from an ego perspective or a social standing perspective. We just quite like getting to know people, and that's really, really nice.
Yeah.
But it's because we use it as clues to understand who people are. Yeah, but it's the way do you see yourself for 5 years? I mean, I remember being a kid, and my sister, for example, had all her ducks in a row. She's like, "I'm going to do this by this age, this by this age, this by this age." And again, I think society and culture forces us to kind of create this life plan. Who the heck has ever stuck to the life plan? Because life happens. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we
Yeah.
may some people may stay to it slightly more than others, but it probably doesn't happen in the way they thought it was going to happen, or in the time frames that they thought it was going to happen. Like, it's planning in a sense is almost a bit of a lie. I'm not saying it's bad to have a good trajectory that we're aiming towards something, but holding on to it so tightly, I think, can lead to a lot of misery. So yeah,
Yeah,
after
plans have
after
always
kid.
got to kind of be fluid as well. As you say,
Yeah,
things change and things adapt, and and also a strong believer of the weirdest and most wonderful opportunities will come out of nowhere, and it doesn't quite match what you're doing, but you really want to do it, and that's where I say that's where you change projection, and
yeah,
that keeping up with the Joneses culture is also another massive thing that's hugely ingrained in the UK of like, oh, Jimmy's got a new car, so I've got to get a new car. Lawrence just had
yeah,
a baby, so we've got to have a baby. It's so
yeah,
weird that we still
yeah.
have that.
It is completely weird. And again, I think it's a David Attenborough sociological human behavior type thing. And that's why who you hang out with is really important. Because if you're going to naturally want to keep up with the Joneses, who are the Joneses you want to be like? Who are the people
Yeah.
whose life you want to have? Like, hang out with those people who have those things and live that life, and you're more likely to end up having it because you'll be forced to take the certain behaviors and actions that lead to it. Yeah. So when I got asked that question, I knew that wasn't where I wanted to go, and so I started looking for something else.
And then that led you to trading.
Yeah, so it was pretty much that week, I think. I was sat on the underground heading into work, and I had a metro paper, and I was flicking through the metro paper trying to kill that dead time. And I saw a little advert for a Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar in central London. So I
Great
thought,
book.
right, I'm going to register for that. So I got to work, registered. That weekend, I turned up to the event, and it turned out I'd signed up for the event, but the wrong one. So I thought I was going to a property investment seminar. I was wrong. I'd signed up for the financial market trading seminar. So I was like, oh, well, I'm here now. I may as well see what that's about. I don't want to have made a wasted journey into the center of
Yeah.
town. And it just blew my mind. It totally opened up what was possible. It revealed to me what life could be. It revealed to me a step-by-step plan that I could follow in order to get there. And so I was like, this is what I'm going to start doing. So I took out a credit card, took out a personal loan, paid about half my annual salary at the time onto those loans and credit cards so I could get the education I wanted, so I could learn how to do it. So I technically went into debt to do that. But then 7 months later, I was able to quit that rubbish job and start traveling around the world, which is what I wanted to do, and start trading for my income. So that's kind of where it all started, basically by accident.
That's crazy. So can you tell us a bit more about like that beginning of the process of that eureka moment of, oh my God, okay, these are all the things that are possible, and what were sort of some of the first steps in that journey? Because I think, because we're going to get into later, trading is still this kind of thing where people still see it as that Wolf of Wall Street, everyone shouting at each other, it's chaos, it's 100 mile an hour, it's
Yeah.
everywhere. So what was your introduction to it, and what was that sort of beginning of the process like?
So I remember when I was sat in that seminar room for the very first time, one of the things that kind of stood out to me from what was said, and it was a bit of a throwaway comment, but you know when just one of those little things just hits you. And they were talking about something I knew about already, but they were talking about how care homes for the elderly are so expensive. And I've always been someone that wants to take care of my family, wants to take care of my loved ones. And I know my parents at some point may need to go into a home. And I thought, I don't want to be in a financial position where they have to sell the house that they worked hard to get, pay tax on their whole lives to pay for basic care in their later life. I just don't want that for them. And I've got two parents, and genetically, my family lived for quite a long time, so I'm going to need to look after them for quite a few years. So I was like, I'm definitely not going to be able to look after them on the salary I had back then in retail. So I knew it was like a wake up call. I was like, I knew I needed to do something different to what I was doing, and I already kind of knew that, but that was a real emotional pull for me. That I was like, I need to do this. I need to create some other way of generating income that can actually lead to wealth. versus just having a job, because a job is not going to lead to me having wealth. It's definitely not going to lead to me having freedom and the lifestyle that I want. So in those early days, I'd obviously paid for a training and paid for mentorship, and I just got stuck in. So I set aside time every single day to do that. I'm a big believer in time blocking. There's a fantastic book called The One Thing, um, which doesn't mean you can only do one thing with your life. It just means each time you're doing something, only be doing one thing. So time
Yeah.
block trading time block work time block gym time, whatever it might be that you're focusing on. And that was a real game changer for me, reading that book. So I started doing that with my trading. Sometimes it was an hour a day, sometimes it was just half an hour a day. And that allowed me to chip away at making progress. And it felt very overwhelming to begin with. It's a brand new skill. It's like trying to learn a new language, but bit by bit, because I had feedback versus just trying to learn online and the wild, wild west of like YouTube videos and random forums, because I had a step by step process to follow. I feel like it made it a lot easier to actually master the skill. And I would say even when I left my job after 7 months, I wasn't necessarily a master, but I was profitable. I was making money. So I felt confident enough to leave my job and go for it. And I've obviously refined and mastered the skills over the next 11 years. And that refinement is what I now teach other people how to do as well.
Amazing. And the other thing I'm going to pull on is that obviously you mentioned there that you basically took out a loan to gain the experience and the knowledge that you have now. And a lot of people probably listen to that going, Jesus Christ, that's a huge risk. Oh my God. What would you say to that? Because my advice would always be, it all depends on the person. Some people are comfortable with that risk. Some people aren't. Like one of the biggest things that probably come from this conversation, and we were going to touch on later, is like risk tolerance plays a massive role on any kind of anything anyone does really.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it massively does.
there's no right or wrong answer. It's just about understanding yours, because
Yeah.
then you can do what suits you best. So how did you go? How was your rationale around that? Okay, we're going to take this quite big risk and we're just going to go all in and see what happens. What was your thinking around that process?
So I think there's again, like you said, there's no wrong answer, there's no right answer. There's just different ways and different ways you feel about money. For me, I think in that moment that I made that decision, it didn't feel like a big risk, is the truth of it. I had a job, so I was making money each month. Okay, rubbish money, but I was still making money each month. And the loan I took out, I was going to spread over 7 years. I obviously paid it off a lot quicker than that in the end because I was making money. So it was a low monthly fee to give myself even just the opportunity to have a different life. So it didn't feel like a big risk. It felt like maybe a long risk in the sense of, if it doesn't work out, okay, I'm going to have to pay this off for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
But what's my other option? I
Yeah.
just didn't see another option for me. And I was like, I know this thing can work. Yes, I'm going to have to work hard to make it work. Yes, I'm going to have to do the right things to make it work. I can't just hand money over, then expect it all to be hunky dory. That's why I talk about 3 magic beans of personal growth: time, money, and energy. You need all 3 of those things invested in yourself to see growth. And so it didn't feel like a massive risk because I knew I could handle the monthly repayment. And so I think I kind of looked at it as the monthly amount, which was, I don't know, let's say it was £200. Like, that doesn't feel like a lot over 7 years, although 7 years feels like a long time. It wasn't, I don't know, 9 grand or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about the 9 grand. I was thinking about what can I afford to pay each month. And so knowing that that was my way to access what I wanted to access made it not feel like massive risk. And I just felt like the riskier thing, to be honest, um, was to keep being trapped in retail and not have another way out.
Yeah, I completely get.
It-
Did the self-doubt never creep in though? Because I can imagine it did, with the whole
Oh yeah, still
shit.
does.
Have I massively screwed this up, or have I made the wrong decision? Because I
Yeah,
think I have a saying that I always say to my partner of like, you can only make the best decision you can based off of the information that you have at the time. You can
yeah,
constantly look back and go, oh, if I knew then what I know now, I would have made a very different decision. But that's not actually the reality. So did you ever have the moment of, oh my God, what have I done here? Have I made the right call? I think particularly from my experience, like particularly like if you're trading currencies and stuff, obviously it goes up and down and things can go wrong. That if you're not the right person for it, that can really mess with your head. And
Yeah.
I can imagine that might have come into play, but I'm purely guessing there.
It definitely comes into play when you're, especially, I think in the first month in particular, when everything was new and I felt like I wasn't going to get it, I wasn't going to grasp it. It's like, why have I disinvested all this money? But at the same point, the fact I invested all that money gave me a fire up my arse that
Yeah.
forced me forwards. So it wasn't easy to give up. And I'm a big believer in making it hard for yourself to give up, whether that's a financial thing, like me taking out a loan. So I kind of was like, I have to make this work
Yeah.
now. Whether that is having such a compelling, passionate, emotional reason why you're doing it. Like it's to make sure your kids actually get to see you on a day-to-day basis rather than you being trapped working 12, 13, 14-hour days in a job that doesn't give a crap about you. Whatever makes it hard for you to stop going forward is always a good thing, in my opinion. And okay, if I was a different type of person, maybe I would have made that investment in myself and then done nothing with it. That that was a potential risk. But and what I could have also been if I was that person is I could have then blamed the people that trained me, saying it was their fault when actually no, it's me not doing
Yeah.
the work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm very, very aware of that as well. So I think for me, the riskier thing would have been not going all in because I'm a bit of an all or nothing person.
I completely agree. I think, particularly like if anyone's listening to this and considering a course in whatever that is, particularly if you've got some investment in it, and obviously that has to be within reason of what you can afford. But if you've thrown money at it, you're probably going to be. And I myself, I'm the same. Is you're probably more likely to stick to it. And I think that would probably be the advice I give to anyone looking at courses: is going. Free courses are great, especially to give you a feel for something before you jump in. But I think in terms of following through, I certainly have whenever I've put money in, if that's when I've followed through with it. So
Well, exactly, exactly. And like my community, my trainings that I do now, other than like the introductory free stuff, they aren't cheap. They cost money, and it's for a lot of people, it's a lot of money that's painful for them. And guess what? Since my prices have been that, my fees have been that level, way more people have been doing the work. And I could not be prouder of them because there's pain attached to it in a good way. Like
yeah,
you've got skin in the game. Whereas if I, especially the amount of work I actually put into helping people become successful that my team now put in, if we were to be charging £500 for the length of support and everything that we do, we'd be so devaluing what we do and how we do it, and people wouldn't value it in the same way. So yeah, it's an interesting one because I'm also the type of person that I want to help everyone on the planet, and I'm
yeah.
like I'm learning that I can't do that.
If you obviously, some people will listen to that and go, "That's a lot of money to throw into it," and I'd say completely understand it. But if there is anyone that's going, "I'm not sure if I'm ready to throw that at it just yet," or "I'm not in a position to throw that at it yet," because again, that comes down to risk tolerance. Is there any advice that you would give?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think if so, I talk about something called the wealth triangle, which I've kind of pulled together from all my years of learning and reading and experiencing money. And the bottom of that is I call the red zone, which is financial difficulty. Um, and if you're in financial difficulty, the summary of that is that you've got more money going out than you've got coming in. If you're at that stage of your financial life, you should not be looking at trading. You should not be looking at investing. You need to be sorting out your finances, getting a better paid job, and cutting down your expenses. You need to stop leaking money, basically. Once you have a bit of money coming in, more than you've got going out, so you can actually save a little bit, you can maybe go on holiday, you can maybe start investing at that point. That's when you should start looking at things like investing. So I've got like a whole week's worth of training where I do like and this, I'm not trying to pitch here, I'm just saying this examples of stuff. So I've got loads of free materials on my website. We do a week long coaching, which is a 90-minute session Monday to Friday in the evenings, with then practice and support during the days across that 5 nights, 5 days as well. And that's only £98. Now, if people wanted to go to mentorship, then we're looking at thousands from that point.
Yeah,
But courses like that, which actually give you a proper sense of what it is to trade the markets, plus an actual certain level of coaching and feedback so you can start to practice. Because if all you're doing is looking at free information with no form of feedback, you're never going to make progress, or it's going to take you years to make progress. So the feedback mechanism is so important. So finding a way to do that with people that you trust who've made a success of it, but not just made a success of it for themselves, have helped other people get successful, is so important. Because if you've only ever done it for yourself, that's lovely. well done you. But that doesn't mean you can teach other people. That doesn't mean you've got a system that actually works. That doesn't mean you've got a process that is replicable. So you need to make sure whoever you're working with has got all of those things in place.
I think as well, the other thing I was going to ask you about, and this is a bit of a left field question, so bear with me, Lewis, but it's that whole thing with, particularly with social media, there are there's a lot of information out there for trading. There's also a lot of people that are over egging what's possible and what's not possible, particularly in short amounts of time.
Yeah.
What would you say to that, particularly as you're directly in the space? Like, I'm an outsider looking in, going, really? Like, and then it becomes really hard as someone scrolling through that because there's so much out there.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same thing. It's like my knowledge base. I've got a lot of knowledge around health and fitness. The amount of shite that's on there
Yeah.
about health and fitness is crazy.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
I mean, first of all, you're right. There's a lot of rubbish out there, and similar to you, I see certain things. I'm like, that's such utter rubbish, and I get tarred with that same brush. I'm sure you probably do sometimes as well, like because there's such a negative understanding about what I do because there is a lot of scammers out there, and it's money related, so it automatically has a higher level of emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been scammed. I've been scammed. My dad's been scammed. My very good friends have been scammed. Like that is out there. It's very common, unfortunately, and I hate that it's common. So take time to get to know people. What I do, which I think is very different to a lot of the stuff which is actually a scam, is I'm actually teaching people. Like my goal is to make them not need me. I'm not selling a widget or a gadget. I'm not selling some software or anything like that. Everything I teach you to use, you can access for free in terms of the charting software and the brokers. I've got no affiliation with brokers. I don't make any commission off you placing trades. The sole way that my business makes money, and I want to make that distinction, me versus my business is different things. The sole reason my business can exist, and it has to make money in order to exist, to pay our team and to look after our community, is through people investing in themselves to get the education that we provide. So we don't make any money off of your trading. But guess what? It's in my vested interest for my community to grow. And how's my community going to grow best? Word of mouth and you
Yeah.
being successful.
Yeah.
So it's inbuilt in the way that I've created our community to have that element of trust because A, it's a community, everyone's talking to each other all the time, therefore we can't screw people over, nor would we want to. And people are actually learning a skill and becoming successful, and they share that success within the community. So yeah, I think I went off on a tangent myself there. I don't know if I
No,
really
it
answered the
completely
question.
answered my question. I was going to say, do you think we're going to get to a point where the scamming becomes less? Because I agreed, I've been scammed by it, particularly within this trading space. When I was first learning about it, I got screwed over royally. Um, and I think that's the thing that also makes people so scared of trading. Like I'm not I don't trade the markets. I'm very much a set it and forget it index fund guy, and I'm happy with that. I'm staying there, thank you. But I think that's the big thing is, are we ever going to get to a point where the financial information, particularly around trading, gets just a lot more, not even, I think regulate is hard because social media, and there's other things on social media that need regulating as well. But do you think we're ever going to get to a point where people can start trusting it a little bit more? Because I think that's what's putting people off
Yeah,
trading,
I don't think we are,
is
to be
that.
honest. I think that there's more and more creators, more and more noise, more and more people pretending they know what they're on about. So I don't think it's going to get better. I can actually, although I like to be hopeful, I think it's probably going to get worse in one sense. But then I think when it gets worse, those who are true shine even brighter, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I hope will happen. And I feel like one of the best ways you can avoid being scammed on Instagram or things like that, or any form of trading related thing, is are you giving your money to someone else to do it for you? Which means you're really being lazy and you're kind of taking like a magic pill, like a magic diet pill, and you're just thinking it's all going to work out because you've handed your money over to somebody else. Or are you actually developing skills that even if that person disappears, you'll still have? So if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, which is very unlikely because I don't really get on buses, but if I am on a plane and the plane crashes, that's far more likely for me, then are you still going to be able to do the thing that they were teaching you to do? And the answer is my entire community would continue on if I was to die, which is a bit of a weird, morbid thought, but I also think it's pretty cool because it's not about me. I'm just the catalyst of helping other people start to
Yeah.
develop this skill for themselves.
I think it's interesting because whenever someone builds like a personal brand that has a business attached to it, there's this assumption that without them it can't function, and it's kind of almost separating out
Yeah.
that personal brand versus business thing because they're two separate things. But I think you're right. I personally don't see it getting any better. I think as well. I hope we get to the point more so of I'm not saying everyone should get into trading, but I more so want more people to be open to the possibility. Because it's funny, like to give you a real world example. So my mum's a mortgage and financial advisor, right? The fact that I have any skin in the game when it comes to stocks and shares throws her through a loop. She hates the idea. She's like, "What? That's so risky. That's this." It is her
Yeah.
job. I'm like, how does this not work? But it just shows that whole thing of that people just have different mentalities towards it. And it's more, I want to get to the point where people are open to it. Because I'm very much one of those people that go, I don't know something about that. I'm going to go learn it and understand it. And then I can make the decision on whether I want to get involved or not involved and then leave it there. And I think that's where I hope we'll get to. Because I think so many people hear that you trade and they
Yeah.
go, oh, that's risky. And you're like, yeah,
If
but
you,
as long
if you
as you
understand it, but I
understand the
also believe
risks.
that trading is lower risk. At least my style of trading is lower risk than, say, property investment. Massive believer in that. I mean, I do property investing as
Yeah.
well because I took my trading profits and I now diversify into other asset classes like property. Right now, I'm in the middle of an HMO development, which has been absolutely terrible and been screwed over by a very bad architect. So it's going to either cost me £30,000 to put right, or I'm going to lose £60,000. One of the two, we don't know right now. But if it wasn't for trading as an additional income, A, I wouldn't have the capital to even try that stuff. B, I wouldn't be able to cover the problems that happen in property either. And my personal style of trading, which I teach people, is low risk but high reward. So we only ever risk 1% of our accounts on each trade that we place. Whereas when I'm investing in a property, I've got a lot more than 1% of my total net worth involved in that
Capital
deal, which could
involved,
still
yeah.
go wrong. So I don't understand. It's just people's understanding, or rather lack of understanding. And because of my method as well, we've got a super great guarantee that if you're one of our mentees, we guarantee that you cannot lose all of the money from your trading account if you stick to our system. It's actually mathematically impossible for that to happen, which takes a lot of pressure off of people and a lot of fear off of people so they can actually just focus on the work of mastering this skill set of trading.
I think that's the big key, is that taking the
Yeah.
pressure off and allowing people to learn. Because it's like what I always talk about, very different context, so bear with me. But it's like when I always talk about like disability, everyone doesn't allow people space to learn. If you don't give that space to learn, people aren't gonna be comfortable with it. It's almost like we talk about being uncomfortable enough so that you actually learn, but then there's a fine balance of being comfortable enough in a situation where you can absorb the information
Yeah.
because you're not in
Yeah,
panic
big time.
stations.
I feel like that space to learn thing is really important because you must get kind of ridiculous questions from people, probably about disability or even just about health and fitness stuff all the time. And I get ridiculous questions all the time about trading stuff. And sometimes you can tell, sometimes I get it, I'm not always right, but sometimes you can tell when someone's asking from a place of actually wanting to know or asking because they're being an asshole.
Yeah.
And there's two different energies that come with it. And I'm learning to try and just assume that everyone's doing it from the nice perspective. But I remember when a load of stuff kicked off about race a couple of years ago, and a lot of people were like, it's not our job to teach you about this. Well, actually, you're right, it's not. But if someone's actually wanting to learn, why are you not answering the questions? Like you're feeding into that
Yeah.
problem more than just actually engaging in that conversation. And from someone who actually wants to learn and understand, why wouldn't you do that? Like there's certain questions I get. Like one question I get asked, which can be asked in either of those ways, is Lewis, if you're such a good trader, why are you teaching other people? You can ask that as an asshole, or you can ask that as someone who genuinely is interested. Like, why are you teaching people, Lewis? Like, you make money from trading. Why are you bothering to do this? That's a very different question to, oh, if you're such a successful trader, which I'm like, I'm so bored of seeing that crap commented on my posts. It's like, because it takes me 30 minutes a day to trade financial markets. I make more than a full-time income off my trading. That's why I was able to leave my job. What do you want me to do? Oh, well, you should just go and enjoy yourself. Yeah, I did that for years. I've partied all over the world. I want something a bit more meaningful. I want to start helping people like I used to help people when I was a counselor. Oh, that never happened. You never did that. Yes, it did. I've literally got all the piece of paper.
It's so interesting. We assume so much, and I think you hit the nail on the head of like it happens so much in the disability world. Of you can tell so much like the intention of something. You can tell it
Yeah.
instantly from the way it's said. So like people go, "Oh, why'd you answer the stupid questions?" Because I can tell if it's just people being genuinely inquisitive or out to
Yeah.
try and make a laugh or and you can instantly tell. And I think you're completely right. I talk about it all the time on here. When it comes to disability, want to create a referral culture. So I particularly work in the disability social media space. So I always argue if you're in a position where you don't want to answer that day because you feel like you've constantly explained what your disability is, refer to someone else.
Yeah.
Go to so many different people in this community. Go speak to this person because they will talk your ear off about it and love it. And I think that's we just need to allow people space to learn. It's that whole thing again of just like you can always tell someone's intent, and we need to just allow people. Like again, we always say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but I think we often lean out of that because we always think, oh, but there is, and then people hesitate, and it's that whole argument of
Yeah.
I'd rather you just know than not know. And it's so mad that it's interesting that you see it, you get it. It's because obviously disability, I understand, is something that people don't see all the time. So they like, wow, this is amazing, and this, that, the other. But particularly in your world,
Yeah.
it's crazy that happens. Now you've explained it, I can completely see it. I can go,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
could see that
happens all the
happening.
time, happens all the time. And we need to allow people space to grow. We need to allow people space to ask questions, especially if they're uncomfortable ones, as long as they're coming at it from the right perspective. But even if they aren't, sometimes it's good to answer anyway with kindness, because I mean, I'm so bored of blank profiles commenting various different crap on my stuff. But hey ho, boost engagement, right? So we're happy with it either way. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose as well, I think that's a lot more rife in I don't know actually. No, I've seen several people with very weird profile pictures
Yeah.
and I'm like, what are you doing? Um but yeah, I think it's definitely more rife in your sector because so there's a lot of
Yeah.
scammy
Yeah,
content out there when it
exactly.
comes to
And I
trading.
say, if you actually knew me, you wouldn't be saying that. And you don't know me. And I have to remember they don't know me. So it's not even a personal attack. They're
Yeah.
attacking someone or something that's upset them or scammed them in the past. And I'm just a punch bag for them that particular day. And tomorrow they'll find a different punch bag. So yeah.
On that note though, on that note of like misinformation, what are some of the like biggest myths about trading that really
Uh
frustrate you?
that well, at least my style of trading, that it's high risk. It's not. That it takes loads of time every day. It doesn't. It's just 30 minutes a day when you know what you're doing. That it's super hard to learn, which it probably is if you don't have feedback. But if you've got feedback, it's like a puzzle. Once you've got the key bits in place, you can see the whole image, and it doesn't take that long to learn. Um, People think it's going to make them a millionaire overnight. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I wish it was. That's unfortunately not the case. Um, and that you pro I'll just finish on another one, that you need to give your money to someone else to do it for you.
I think as well, like you, is that whole idea of get rich quick. That's when you start entering scammy territory. So to give people a real example, for clients that you take through the process, particularly your mentorees, because I imagine that's where you can track it a bit more. What sort of trajectory can people see? Now, I'm not saying like Lewis, promise the listeners how
Yeah.
much they're going to earn, but more so like to give people an idea of the journey sort of looks like, particularly maybe pull on the threads of like what was your journey like, and then versus where you're at now with the team that support you and
Yeah, so
the
I
people
was
that you
when I
support.
started, I was able to leave my job after 7 months. That's when I quit and started going full-time trader, but I didn't need to be earning a lot of money because I was a young person, didn't have any dependents. I started traveling, so I didn't need to pay my rent or anything like that. So I had far lower costs that I needed to meet. Now, within my community, one of the things we don't talk about, funny enough, is money, which sounds really strange. But the reason we don't talk about money is because we talk about percentages instead. So we're always focused on percentage returns. Why? Because we've got people who are multimillionaires in our community, people who are right at the start of their wealth creation journey. And so if we're using the same systems, the same processes, and we're placing very similar trades, then a true reflection of performance isn't the amount of money you made on that trade. It is the percentage you made growth on your entire account. So when we talk about percentage growth on our account, it's over the total amount, not just the money we had in that particular trade or investment. So we tend to work with people who've never ever traded before, and we can take someone from knowing nothing about trading to within 2 months trading live, trading with some confidence. I'm not going to say fully confident because that is different for each person, but some confidence trading live and having competency in their trading skills as well. So we tend to say around about the 6 month mark what you should be aiming for. And some people are quicker, some people are slightly longer. You should be aiming for between 5% return and 10% return each month. So that's on 30 minutes a day, Monday to Friday. Obviously, weekends are shut generally. And then you're looking at, so if you make 5% per month for a year as an average, you're looking at 80% return. So if you compare that to the bank, it's pretty darn good. And then if you're doing 10%, which is
Yeah.
the upper level generally, then you can be making over 200% return, which basically means you triple your account in a 12-month period. Now, we do have some of our students who've been with us for longer than that, who are trading at higher percentage levels on a monthly basis than that, which is amazing. And I love that for them. I'm still only around the 5 to 10% mark, and I'm very happy with that. So I'm consistent with that. I don't feel the need to push it further. I like my little trading routine in my 30-minute window, but I've given people the skills to then run with it. And surely that's a sign of a good teacher, is that the student then ends up surpassing them.
What's really nice as well, because I think there's a culture within any financial thing of like, you've got to be like here.
Yeah.
And it's quite nice to hear that you've gone, no, I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy doing this. I don't need to be here. That's really nice to hear because I think that then pulls us away from what we were talking about earlier of that like Instagram. Oh my God, like you need to be at full capacity all the
Yeah.
time. Go for the maximum you can. It's quite nice
Yeah.
to hear that you're like, no, I'm good. I am
I
well
also feel
comfortable
like
and happy here.
as my money has grown, as my wealth has grown because of trading, I've become more risk averse. So I don't feel the need to push that particular envelope. I've kind of found my level of comfortability with what I'm happy with earning without feeling too much stress on my trading as well on a monthly basis. So I'm very kind of happy at that place and at that level. Um, and I think funny to your point as well, one of the things I've been conscious of and aware of in myself is this internal battle and struggle of kind of imposter syndrome in the sense of when my business started to really grow, it suddenly started making more money as a business than I was making from my own trading, even though my trading was making money. And I suddenly went, Am I am I a fake? And then I was like, no, Lewis, you're still making. What's wrong with you, Lewis? You're still making money from your own trading.
Yep.
You still left your job from your own trading. You just happen to also be pretty good at business and helping people. So now you can have a bigger impact than just yourself, and the rewards come from helping multiple people versus just yourself. So yeah, it's still a bit of a headspace I'm trying to work my way through.
It's also that big narrative that everyone talks about, and I completely agree with it. It's if you can get yourself in a situation where you've got several streams of income, that's a great place to be because as soon as one plug gets pulled, you go, "Ah, it's okay, I've got this other one." Whereas if you've only got the one and
Yeah,
someone pulls the plug, you're like,
yeah,
"Shit, what
exactly.
am I
And if
gonna
my
do
business was
now?"
to die, which I don't think it will, because it's a proper community that will keep looking after itself. But if the business was to stop making any money, I'd still be fine. And that is a very nice position to be in. But that's because I did the thing first before I started teaching the thing. Um, which is something I find really weird about business coaches that have never had a business other than coaching businesses.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing because it's that whole idea of like you have to be able to explain something in essentially preschool language to be able to fully be able to teach someone it. Because if you get too caught up in the jargons, you're going to lose people. Because also the other thing I've realized, the more I've told people, or even just odd things, is like I'm like, if I can give it in a
Yeah.
narrative that they're going to understand, in terms of like if they're a big football fan, I can link it into football. They can they'll go, oh, okay, I get it now. Whereas if you just like blah 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 blah, and then you walk away, it doesn't go in, and I think that's the big thing. You're hitting on the head of, like, the amount of people you see promoting something, and they've only been doing it for
Yeah.
6 weeks, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, how does that work? Oh, I'm an expert this," and I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Expert
Yeah.
how?"
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in that.
Completely. What about, like, obviously we've spoken about people obviously in your community doing really well, yourself, your journey. What advice would you give someone who's potentially looking to get involved in trading as a very much a case of like wanting to dip their toe in and not quite there yet? And like,
Uh,
what
I
would you
would
say to
say
them?
find someone like me who you like and can trust, and consume the free stuff that they've got out there first, and see if you continue to like them, see if you continue to trust them, see if what they're talking about makes sense to you, and then try one of their lower cost offer things and then take it from there. But the worst thing you can do, I think, particularly with trading, is go to absolutely everybody, try and learn all the free stuff because it's all different. So I'm not saying it's all good, I'm not saying it's all bad, but it is all different. So you're going to just confuse yourself and end up taking on loads of information that you don't really need and is only going to make it difficult for yourself. So pick a person and follow their methodology if you can see it's got a track record that works.
I completely agree. It's something I use all the time. I'm notorious for it. Of like, if I want to learn something from you, I latch onto you because of that reason. Of like that whole thing of if I can understand the way you explain it, then if I need to ask questions, it's going to make sense rather than getting too many cooks in the kitchen. They all explain
Yeah.
it in different ways, and you walk away going, "I'm more
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
confused than when
Yeah.
I started."
Definitely. Definitely.
But how long did it take for you to get to the point actually, I think you've answered this, but in terms of financial freedom means different things to different people, but I think one of the things that people be intrigued by, particularly in your journey, is how long did it take you to get to the point where you were comfortable, particularly with the traveling thing? Because I think that's something that people often, when they want to start their own business, start doing their own thing and earning their own money, the big driver is I want to be independent, do what I want when I want, and particularly everyone's got this image of
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
move to Thailand for six
Yeah,
months, and
and
that's
I
what
don't blame
everyone
him, it's
wants to
great in
do.
Thailand. So for me, I was technically well, I left my job after 7 months, so technically around about then, but I continued to grow my trading account from that point as well. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, technically 7 months is the real answer, but to have kind of a more normal lifestyle with my trading paying for it was probably about a year and a half, I would say, as I kind of grew my account. Maybe a little bit less than 2 years, but definitely under 2 years, 18 months to 2 years.
That's it's amazing as well how
Yeah.
quickly that happened. Because I think everyone, particularly when you learn something new, everyone kind of says this whole thing about, oh, you got to do something for 5 years before you feel comfortable with it. And I think it all depends on how long you spend doing it and how quickly you pick things up. Because certain things you're going to pick up quicker than others. Like I'm not going to pick up being a professional footballer for obvious reasons. It's not an area that I have a lot of like expertise and skill set in. However, other things I'll pick up quicker, and I think that's quite nice to hear in your story. It was like people often think, oh, if I want to change career or do something different, it's going to take this long. While it's always going to take time, and I want to really stamp that home, is don't believe anyone that's like, oh, you can change career
Yeah,
tomorrow or you can do this tomorrow.
you can
No, you
start,
can start
and if you don't
tomorrow.
start, it will never
Agreed.
happen. But yeah, it I think it's about giving yourself more options and more choices as well. So we have students who do quit their jobs. We've got students who go part time. We've got students who actually love what they do. And so this is about having an additional income stream that then fuels another area of their life. Like Simon, one of my mentees, was able to help his daughter get on the property ladder in London, which, as we know, isn't cheap because of his trading. We've got Sarah, who managed to save her
Yeah,
dog from having to be put down because he needed expensive surgery, and her trading account had grown to the point where she was able to afford it. But and
that's
that's the stuff that makes
crazy.
me really happy because 'cause I'm like, this thing that you've learned has changed your life in that really meaningful way. Whereas if it wasn't for her making the decision to start this skill set of trading, she wouldn't have been able to do that.
That's crazy. I mean, I didn't even think like particularly the dog one. Dog one
Oh,
hits home because I got two myself and have it's yeah, that must feel so nice. But it's also really nice to hear as well that your clients are going in different directions because I think because well, there's this often thing of like, oh, you've got to go all in on trading and then it will eventually become your full-time job and you can do all this. It's quite nice to hear that you've got some clients that go, no, I'm quite happy just
yeah.
having this as an extra income because I think that then plays into the whole risk tolerance thing because
Mm.
I think no matter. if the risk is balanced and also if it's fairly low, there's always that feeling with trading of, oh, it's risky because you always hear with anything that's trading, your capital is at risk, blah, 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 blah. Um, and I think that's quite nice that you can kind of find the balance of the two. What role do you think like risk tolerance plays in it though? How do you approach that conversation with your clients? I know you've said obviously with your strategy it's actually fairly low risk, but I imagine it still comes up in a lot of conversations,
Yeah.
particularly
So
initially.
um, we have our risk process, which is the same for everyone. But then different people's risk
Hmm.
profiles or risk appetites or risk personalities will impact the way that they trade. And so we have to be aware of those very early on when we're coaching and mentoring them, because it's going to, if they're really low risk tolerance, they're not going to take hold of opportunity when it's right in front of them. And if they're high risk appetite, then they'll probably take trades and investment opportunities that they shouldn't do. So we need to be aware of that and help give them the right structures depending on which end of that spectrum they're on, which is again is why mentorship is so helpful.
I think it's also really helpful as well having that
Yeah.
mentorship just because you feel more guided. I would imagine anytime that I've had a mentor, it's just felt like you've got that dedicated person to go to. Whereas if you're learning something on your own, it can feel very like daunting. On that note of risk tolerance, is there any advice you can give to someone? Because I think understanding your risk tolerance is such a interesting thing. It's also a powerful thing, but I think it's really interesting to understand your tolerance to it because then that plays not only into if you want to get into any form of trading, but I think it plays into many other
Yeah.
aspects of your life. Is there anything that you can advise people? Well, I know obviously you have it as part of your introductory process, but is there anything you can point people in the direction of if they want to get more
I don't know
understanding
if
of it?
there is, you know. I'm trying to think of like a random resource that I can think of, but I think just analyze your own behavior over the past however long you've been alive. Like, are you happy taking risks? Do you tend to shy away from risks? What would your behavior over the past 5 years suggest about you? And if you can see a pattern of behavior that you shy away from risk, has that actually cost you really good opportunities because you've let the fear take over? And have you, if you're on the flip side of that, taken hold of opportunities that in hindsight probably weren't the best ones, but maybe just got a bit too excited, a bit too carried away, and you made a bad decision that was risky? And then think about, okay, what am I actually looking to achieve? What am I actually looking to do? Maybe I need to take a little bit more risk to achieve that, or maybe I need to take a little bit less risk and be more specific with what I'm trying to go for.
Do you feel that you can work with anyone with any risk tolerance? Because I think
Yes.
as well with trading is that element of like, oh, you've got to take some risk.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that you could? Do you believe that you could work with anyone no matter their risk tolerance?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's fun enough. It's easier to work with people who've got low risk tolerance because we can work with them to help build that confidence around the system. It's harder to pull someone in who's high risk appetite because they're just so willing to press that button. We call it a fuck it trade. And they're like, oh, it's close enough, fuck it. So that's actually harder to work with, but we can work with people on either end of that because again, the way we train people and the way we start people out, it is low risk, even with the sums of money that they would begin with, because regardless if they're super rich or right at the start of their journey, the maximum I want them starting with is £1,000. And you can start as low as 250 or even £500 if you want to. So even if they are going to make some mistakes, that's going to be on a small amount of capital, not a large amount of capital, which is just part of our process of keeping
Yeah.
people safe.
I mean, that makes complete sense. I mean, it's a very different thing. Not saying it's the same thing at all, but it's the same advice I was given when I started doing any form of betting. It was kind of
Yeah.
go with money you're happy to lose. And that would be the same approach I would take if I was doing something similar to your course. Is like, look, I'm going to look, like, let's say, okay, let's say I go for the lower end. So let's say I say 250. If I'm comfortable losing that 250, but then I'm
Yeah.
learning a skill for it, it's worth it, and I think but then that comes into, like we said, the whole risk tolerance thing, and, it's so interesting how many different parts
Yeah.
of
Big
your
time.
lives it plays into. But then lastly, I'm gonna ask you the last question I ask every guest, which is what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
Um, so I'm going to give a different answer based on our conversation than I thought I was going to give. So the thing, I don't know if this is politically correct or incorrect, to be honest, but I do think that people should, and I'm going to put it into two contexts here. If you're going to be teaching someone how to do something, you should have done it yourself first. And taking that to a more political level, if you're going to be the head of a particular area of the government, you should have worked in that industry before you're in that position of power to make decisions over that area. So if you're the Minister of Education, you should have been a teacher at some point in your life. Yeah. Yeah. Big time. And my parents were both teachers, and the level of frustration they felt for years because educational ministers were making horrendous choices based on no working experience or lived experience was shocking. And that's all over the place. Same in
Yeah.
business, the decisions they make about the economy. I mean, we've got Rachel from accounts who literally was pretty much not even a proper accountant, worked in the bank and tried to pretend all of this stuff, which just turns out isn't true. And she's now setting the budget for the whole of the UK.
It's so
It's
true though, but I
madness.
think
It's
that
mad.
we can even scale down to just any, like you say, within business. It's mad how many times you'll see, particularly in the management space. While I agree managing is a transferable skill, to have understanding of the industry you're working in is so important. And then it's so interesting how many times so I've seen managers move into positions, and I'm like, you've never done this job before. Yes, you've been a manager before, but you don't understand the context of everything that happens below
Exactly.
you. It's so
Yeah.
interesting, but then I think it's this jump mentality we have in the employed world of like that whole you'll you can achieve more if you constantly move. I think that's fed into this whole thing of people being not inexperienced, but inexperienced in the organizations they're working within. And that's not everyone, agreed. It's not everyone, but it's so interesting how it scales all the way back from up at the political space all the way down to businesses. It's yeah, you're completely right. You gotta have understanding, but it's what we all talk about in the disability space. The amount of times decisions get made and like, who did you consult with a disability? No one. Right. So how did you reach that decision?
Yeah.
It's just so strange that
Exactly.
we're in a space where that still happens. And it happens everywhere. It
I know. And
happens within not just
everywhere.
disability, as we say, up the top, it happens within race and gender. It's a minefield, absolute minefield. But thank you so much for coming on, Lewis. It's been a great conversation. Of course, guys, as I always do, I will link all of Lewis's details below for you if you do want to check him out or get in contact. Yeah, thank you so much, Lewis.
Thanks for having me.